Welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be talking about storytelling in the professional world and how you can use it to really make an impact. We'll be using Esther K. Choy's book, Let the Story Do the Work, as a jumping off point. Sort of a guide as we explore this fascinating world of using stories strategically, especially in a business setting.
It's interesting how we often think of storytelling as just for entertainment. We don't always realize how powerful it can be in our careers.
Right from the start, the book kind of throws us a curveball. It challenges this idea that having amazing qualifications is like a golden ticket to success.
Choi actually uses this great story about a business school admissions officer to illustrate this point. So this officer is reading tons of applications, unbelievable candidates. But what stuck with the officer, what they remembered, weren't the perfect GPAs or the highest test scores, but the stories, the applications that had really compelling narratives.
Wow, so it's the human connection, the personal stories that really made the difference, even in a world where we think everything's about data and numbers.
Exactly. And Choi takes this idea even further. She says it's not just about school admissions. It's like we're all constantly going through these lifelong mini admissions applications.
So like every time we're trying to convince someone of something, whether it's pitching a new project or applying for funding, it's like we're trying to get admitted into their good graces.
Exactly. Think about it. You're an entrepreneur trying to get investors on board, a nonprofit trying to rally support, or even just a manager trying to get your team excited about an idea. You absolutely need to grab their attention, and a good story can do that in a way that just bullet points on a slide can't.
Okay, I'm seeing how this lifelong mini admissions applications idea could be really helpful. But how do we actually put it into practice? Like, how can we use it in our day-to-day interactions?
It's about shifting your perspective a little. Think of every encounter as a chance to make your case. Just like a great application essay can convince an admissions committee, a well-told story can sway decisions and get people to take action.
So it's like every conversation is a chance to present our case, our application, through a story.
Precisely. And this applies to so many different situations. Let's take finance, for example. A lot of people find it really intimidating. All the jargon, all the complexity.
Oh, absolutely. Finance can feel like a whole different language sometimes. How do stories fit into that world?
Choi gives this example of an asset manager. He's going up against these giant competitors trying to win over a pension fund. But instead of drowning them in technical details, he uses analogies and anecdotes that they can connect with. He talks about his fund's strengths in a way that relates to their own experiences.
So by making it personal and relatable, by finding that common ground, he's able to build trust and cut through all that complicated financial stuff.
Exactly. It's all about knowing your audience and figuring out how to connect what you're saying to their world.
Speaking of connecting, let's talk about networking. I don't know about you, but those what do you do conversations can be so awkward.
Yeah. Oh, tell me about it. And most of the time, the answers people give are totally forgettable, right? They don't really spark any interest. Choi talks about this in the book.
It's like saying, I'm an accountant. Doesn't exactly make people lean in, eager to hear more. So what's the secret?
It's about creating a hook. Instead of just stating your job title, you say something that grabs their attention, something that makes them curious.
Like, I help people make sense of their finances instead of, I'm an accountant.
Right. Or instead of, I'm a software developer, you might say, I build the digital bridges that connect people and information. See how much more interesting that is.
I love that. Okay, I'm definitely going to need to work on my hook. Instead of, I'm a podcast host, maybe I should try something like, I explore fascinating ideas and share them with the world.
That's the idea. You want to find a phrase that captures the essence of what you do in a way that makes people want to know more.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've learned how storytelling can help us stand out from the crowd, make complex things understandable, and even transform those dreaded networking moments. But before we jump into how storytelling can drive change in the world of nonprofits, I want to ask our listeners, have you ever had an experience where a story really made a difference in your professional life? What was it about that story that resonated with you? Keep that in mind as we continue our deep dive into Let the Story Do the Work. Welcome back to our exploration of Let the Story Do the Work. We've seen how powerful storytelling can be in a professional setting. Now let's zoom in on the world of nonprofits. I think it's fair to say that for nonprofits, stories aren't just a nice to have, they're absolutely essential.
Absolutely. Nonprofits are always trying to connect with donors on a deeper level, to get people excited about their mission and actually inspire them to take action. And that's where storytelling comes in.
The book really stresses the importance of knowing your audience, particularly those who are already big supporters. Figuring out what motivates them, what aligns with their values, what truly speaks to them on a personal level.
Exactly. You want to craft narratives that directly address those motivations. There's this really interesting example in the book using a fictional organization called the Florida Oceanographic Society. It shows how to build a nonprofit story that's truly compelling.
Well, I'd love to hear about that. What kind of structure do they use?
Well, they start by painting this really relatable picture. They talk about a woman enjoying a nice seafood dinner, totally unaware of, the impact her meal might be having on the ocean.
Smart. It immediately pulls in anyone who's ever enjoyed a seafood meal, which is probably most of us, without thinking too much about the bigger picture.
Right. Then they introduce this character who volunteers for the Florida Oceanographic Society, and this volunteer explains to the woman how vital oyster reefs are for a healthy ocean ecosystem. And this encounter sparks something in her. It makes her want to get involved.
So they're showing the organization's work through the eyes of someone who was initially kind of clueless. It makes it very personal and relatable. It's like inviting the audience to go on that same journey of discovery.
Precisely. And then, of course, the story ends with a really clear call to action, encouraging listeners to support the organization's mission of protecting Florida's coastal ecosystems.
That's the so what factor, right? It shows how people can actually be part of the solution.
Uh,
That's how you take a great story and turn it into real-world impact.
exactly. And the book makes it clear that this structure can be adapted to fit any nonprofit's unique story.
It's like a template for crafting a narrative that really resonates with your target audience and helps you achieve your specific goals.
Now, let's talk about something that's often overlooked when we talk about storytelling: visuals. We live in a very visually oriented world, and they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, right?
Oh, absolutely. A powerful image can convey so much emotion, so much meaning that words sometimes struggle to capture, but does let the story do the work. Just talk about, adding pictures.
It goes deeper than that. The book introduces this concept called story picture, which is basically a visual framework for making complex ideas easier to understand.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this story picture technique. How does it work?
It's about using visuals that people already understand, like Venn diagrams, graphs, pie charts, things like that. It helps present information in a way that's engaging and easy to remember.
So it's like finding the perfect visual partner for your story.
Exactly. And the book has tons of examples of how this can be used effectively. One that really stuck with me involved using a pie chart to illustrate decision making.
A pie chart for decision making. Now I'm really curious.
It comes from a story that Austin Goolsbee told. He was the chairman of President Obama's Council of Economic Advisors.
That's a pretty impressive source. What was his insight?
Well, Goolsbee was talking about how he approached his job. He said he divided his work into two categories: pulling weeds and planting seeds. Pulling weeds was about identifying and getting rid of ideas or issues that weren't worth pursuing.
So basically cutting out the distractions and focusing on the things that have real potential.
Right. And then planting seeds was about nurturing and developing ideas that could lead to positive change.
Oh, okay, I see where the pie chart comes in. You could represent those two categories visually, maybe with pulling weeds, taking up a bigger slice of the pie, to emphasize how much of decision-making is about figuring out what not to do.
Exactly. It's a simple visual, but it conveys a really important idea about the complexities of making choices.
It makes me think about all those presentations I've sat through where I'm just bombarded with information. If they'd used this story picture approach, it would have been so much easier to absorb the key takeaways.
That's the beauty of it. It turns data and information from overwhelming to digestible and memorable.
We've uncovered so much in this deep dive. From the importance of storytelling in competitive settings, to the power of visuals to make complex things clear and simple. As we move to the final part of our exploration, I want you to think about a time when a visual really grabbed your attention. What was it about that image that made it so powerful? How did it enhance the story it was telling? Hold on to that thought as we delve into the practical side of crafting captivating narratives. There's more wisdom waiting for us in Let the Story Do the Work. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Let the Story Do the Work. We've talked about how powerful storytelling can be in all sorts of professional situations, and now I think it's time to get practical. How can we actually become better storytellers?
Well, the book emphasizes the importance of collecting stories. It's like building a library of narratives that you can draw from whenever you need them.
So it's not just about thinking about our own experiences, but actively seeking out stories from other people, like colleagues, mentors, maybe even those random encounters that really stick with you.
Exactly. It's about being aware of the stories around us and realizing how we can use them to communicate more effectively. The book even gives advice on how to ask the right questions to uncover those hidden gems.
That's a great point about expanding our story repertoire. But let's be honest, not everyone's a natural storyteller. Some people might find it a bit intimidating.
That's where having a framework can be really helpful. The book outlines a structure called Tell Me About Yourself that's incredibly versatile. It can be used in so many different professional scenarios. It's like a roadmap for crafting a narrative that's both compelling and persuasive.
Okay, that sounds like something we could all use.
Mm.
Can you walk us through the elements of this tell me about yourself structure?
Sure. It starts with setting the scene. You want to draw your audience in by establishing some common ground. Maybe you talk about a challenge you faced, a problem you had to solve, or a turning point in your career.
It's like you're showing the listener that you understand their world and you're inviting them into your story.
Exactly. Then you move on to describing your journey. How did you navigate that challenge? What steps did you take? What obstacles did you overcome? What did you learn along the way?
It's a chance to demonstrate your resilience, your problem-solving skills, how you've grown from those experiences.
Right. And finally, you connect your story back to the present moment. You show how the lessons you learn are relevant to the opportunity at hand or the issue being discussed.
It's about bringing the narrative full circle, showing how your past has prepared you for the present. This structure seems so adaptable.
Oh, it is. It can be used for job interviews, client pitches, fundraising appeals, team presentations, you name it. The key is to choose a story that's appropriate for your objective and your audience.
This deep dive has been such a rich exploration of storytelling. We've seen how it can help us plug through the clutter, shed light on complex topics, forge genuine connections, and even make a positive difference in the world. But before we wrap up, we always like to leave our listeners with something to ponder. In the spirit of, let the story do the work. Think back to a time when a story truly captivated you. What was it about that story that made such an impact? How can you weave those same elements into your own communication? And as we say goodbye for now, remember, everyone has a story to tell. Embrace the power of narrative and watch it transform the way you communicate and achieve your goals. Until next time, happy deep diving.